Right, so it doesn't sound like there's anything specific at the moment, but I think probably the best thing to do now would just be to take a quick moment just to ask all of our panelists for their key takeaways or their final thoughts. I know we've covered quite a lot of material today. I know, Michael, you led us off this afternoon. Perhaps you want to be the first to close us out with a few of your key takeaways.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just to sort of reiterate what I was saying before, and I guess that sort of goes to, the question on, what should minority lenders be looking at, and what sort of missteps. And I think the simple thing is just, again, that, this is sort of a good time to do a review of your credit document, see what you've got, and understand, that this is a new strategy that's available to lenders these days. And, if you're not within the sort of the primary group of stakeholders who are moving things forward, that this is a risk that could come up and that could affect you. And so, it's just a matter of, thinking about being aware who your other lenders are, as Dan pointed out, what limitations might CLOs have versus, more agile, distressed investors, who else is in your group, and just sort of having that general awareness of what's going on with your loan, and, what impetus the company might have to enter into a transaction that may potentially prime you, and so sort of pay attention early and often.
Thank you so much. And Jinhee, a couple of your final thoughts or key takeaways, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think my observation is this is not going to happen in most credit agreements have these provisions, and this is not going to happen in most credit agreements. It's going to happen where there's like a real problem at the borrower. They're trying to survive this. There's the priming lenders feel that this is, this entity is going to survive, so they're willing to give them new debt. So it is a little bit of kind of similar thing to what Michael said, but it's a lot about paying attention and monitoring the credit worthiness of your borrowers, and thinking through like which borrowers are going to be more impacted, which I think everyone is doing at this time. But it's, my view is that there's enough flexibility in documents that if a borrower really needs an out, there's going to be some, there will be cases where they can figure out a way to get the flexibility they need. And so it's less about the documents in some ways, unless there's like a fee market change and approach on documentation, which frankly, I don't think that's going to happen, but I could be wrong. But more about like the monitoring and looking closely and asking questions. When you get those lender calls or you get the compliance certificate, look at it and see, make sure that you're thinking about, the potential problems that this company can have, because it's when a company is sort of backed into a corner is when they're going to take these, like they really need help, right? That's when they're going to take these, undertake these kinds of transactions. They are not going to do them very, it's not an easy thing to do. Like you have litigation risk, you have a lot of different risks, a lot of costs that will go into this litigation. And so it's not something that companies will undertake easily. But just keeping a close eye on the credit quality of your companies is important.
Thank you so much. Finally, Daniel, we heard from you. Perhaps you want to close us out with a few of your key takeaways or final thoughts.
Yeah, I think just building on what Jinhee and Michael said, and Michael's observations, I think are excellent in terms of taking a step back from the transaction and considering who are the players and who are the parties driving the transaction. That will sometimes give you some indication of maybe what their longer term motivations are. If you have funds that are deeply experienced in distressed situations, it might be a bit of a tell that they're the ones pushing for this kind of structuring of a transaction, and sort of taking a step back and just considering what it would mean if you give effect to the transaction and think about a potential restructuring scenario. If you're in that the rump piece of the old debt, or you're dissenting or objecting to the proposal, think ahead to the next step of where things might go if the company faces distress. And not every one of these situations will end up in a bankruptcy, but I think from it, just as a matter of prudence, it would be useful to play out some scenarios and what it might mean if you give effect to the transaction, and where would that leave you from, a voting standpoint in a bankruptcy, and where could you have restructuring imposed on you through the cram down process under the new capital structure. So I think those are just things to keep in mind and be aware of.